Hello, I'm Jane Griffiths from the Above and Beyond Group. During these challenging and busy times, we understand that it's hard to make time for your own personal and professional development. We appreciate that your work involves a high focus on caring for people, but caring for yourself first improves how you care for others. This is why we want to give some resources to you to help support you. Leading Self focuses on your relationship with and understanding of your care for yourself. Stress and anxiety is perfectly normal at the moment. We're all going to feel it at different times, and we're going to see it in others around us. And that's because we're in a situation that we've never experienced before. So I wanted to start by talking about locus of control. There's lots of things that we can't control. So we need to really look at what we can control, what we can influence, and how we can adapt. So I guess we can't really control how the government, what plans they put in place for this crisis. We can't control how long it's going to go on for or when a cure or a vaccine will be found. Those are things that are beyond most of our control. What can we control? We can control how we respond to this situation. We can take some control over our own lives and make sure that we're following all the guidelines for social distancing. We can choose, for example, when we go out shopping and make sure it's at a quiet time. We can make sure that we are communicating with people in different ways so that we can control how we do that. There are also things that we maybe can't control, but we can definitely influence. So, for example, we can influence how our own organisation is dealing with COVID-19. Maybe some of us have been able to influence the plans that are put in place, the policies that are put in place, and certainly making sure that anything that is put in place, we're following and we're ensuring that our staff following. So those are all areas that we can influence what is happening. So it's possible to feel really overwhelmed when there's a lot of things that we can't control. So we've talked about what we can influence and what we can control. We can also look at how we can adapt. So in these circumstances, we're all having to find new ways of doing things and work around or work within the rules that are set and make sure that we can still get things done. So we are, as human beings, very adaptable, and it's not always easy to adapt and change. But I think what will come out of this is that people have got the resilience and the ability to adapt the way they behave. And indeed, we'll probably see some positive things in the way that we work that will carry on long after this crisis has passed, but some positive things about the way we interact with other people that we can use in the future. So I now want to talk about that feeling of anxiety and some of the emotions that might sit underneath it, because I'm sure a lot of us are feeling very anxious at the moment, probably a lot more anxious than we would do normally, which is understandable. But if we're going to do something about that, if we're going to try and get towards that feeling of calmness, we need to understand what are the emotions that are underlying the particular anxiety that we're feeling. So this slide really looks at some of the emotions that would sit under that feeling of anxiety. And in order to take some control and to take some action so that we begin to feel more calm, we need to understand what's actually sitting underneath those emotions. So firstly is that feeling of uncertainty, and I guess a lot of us feel that feeling of uncertainty at the moment. Nobody's sure how long this will go on for or what the outcome's going to be. So if we're feeling uncertain, then a way of dealing with that is to take some control. And in our everyday lives, in the way that we go about our lives, there are things that we can control that can make us feel better. So those of us that enjoy perhaps labelling all of our tins and facing them the same way in the cupboard, that's a form of control. So anything that you can do that gives you a sense that you are taking some control can help alleviate that anxiety. The second one is rumination versus perspective. Rumination really means focusing on the distress, all the things that are bad that are causing that pain, whereas perspective is trying to put that, as it says, into perspective, to make sense of it. And to see that not everything is a disaster. If we find ourselves really just focusing so much on that distress, being obsessed by what's on the TV or what's on social media, then getting some perspective and realizing that, yeah, this is something, but it will pass. and it's not influencing every single aspect of our lives right this moment. Next, we're looking at fear. So fear tends to be forward thinking. We're not often fearful of what happened in the past, that's in the past, but we're fearful of what might happen in the future. And that can be very debilitating, really being concerned about the future. As an alternative, looking at mindfulness. So mindfulness is really about being in the here and now, being in that present moment, and finding ways of really getting grounded and being in the present moment. So later on in this video, I'll talk about some ways that you can actually be more mindful and be more in that present moment, which will just take away some of that fear aspect. So the next one I want to talk about is helplessness. So a feeling of being, I guess, the victim and feeling that you have no control over what's happening. It can be a very debilitating feeling. So the way that I suggest people resolve that is to try and create connection, so connection with others. And that can really help in terms of getting some perspective, particularly if it's somebody else who is feeling more upbeat, more positive, and can help with that. And just that human connection is really important in making you feel that you're not alone, and therefore not so helpless. So the next one is impotence. So impotence is, I guess, similar in the sense that you feel that you can't do anything. You're actually unable to do anything in terms of being impotent. And so the way of dealing with that is to take some action. So it's a little bit like the control. If you're feeling impotent, then taking some action makes you feel like you've got that control back and that there's something that you can be doing positively and working on. And finally, tension. So I don't know about you, I know that I hold my tension a lot in my shoulders. You know, I can often find myself being really hunched up, or I feel my tension in my stomach. So the opposite of tension is release. So wherever you feel the tension in your body, it's finding a way of releasing that. And if the body is feeling more relaxed, then inevitably the mind follows. So I wanted to turn now to a model that we use a lot with Silke, and we call it transformational leadership, because it's working not just at the behavioural level, but it's working at the level underneath. So really looking at what is influencing our behaviour. And if we can really work on that, then we've got an opportunity of changing the behaviour, not in the short term, but in the long term. We call this view, action, result, or VAR. So in this situation, imagine this, and I'm sure some of us feel like this maybe all of the time, or at least some of the time. This situation is so scary and also so unfair. There's a lot of things that we're not able to do that we would really love to do. So if we're feeling like that, if that's our mindset and our view, then what is the action? The action is that we're likely to complain and moan about it. We might withdraw from others. And we might constantly watch the news, watch social media, in a way hoping that we're going to get the answer that it's all resolved. The result of that, of course, is that we live in a state of fear. We may live in a state of resentment, feeling that it's unfair that it's happening to us. Often results in a lack of concentration, very difficult to focus on work or home or anything else that's important when you're in that state of fear. So imagine we were to change that view, change that mindset, and let's say we adopted this mindset. This situation, however difficult it is, will pass. In the meantime, I've got the skills and resources I can adapt. So if we've got that mindset and that view, what might we do differently? So we'll find new ways of doing things. We might take a positive choice to limit the news and social media that we're getting so that we're not being bombarded with that. And we may choose to focus on the positive. So what's coming out of this that's positive, and also what's happening in our life generally that is still positive. And what could be some of the results of that? Well, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, it's about learning new technology and getting really familiar with how that works. And also, I think there's an amazing opportunity for you to develop your leadership capability and confidence. I don't know about you, but I've been watching our political leaders over this, and I have been impressed, very impressed, with their decisiveness, with their ability to take action, with their ability to put aside any personal differences or party politics, and also being able to give very clear messages. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to observe those leaders and to model some of that behaviour and take that through into life beyond COVID. So we've talked about what you can control and what you can influence and what you need to adapt, how you need to adapt. We've also talked about some of the emotions that may underpin a feeling of anxiety, and identifying those emotions helps you to take some actions to reduce that level of anxiety. And then we've talked a bit about view and mindset and how influential that is in terms of our behaviour and how we think about things. So I just want to give you now a few tips and techniques about how you can help manage that feeling of anxiety and stress. So the first one I've already mentioned, mindfulness, and that's really about being in the here and now. So a great technique for stopping your mind and all that constant chatter about what's happened in the past and what might happen in the future is to really observe what is happening in this world at this moment for you. So where I am at the moment, for example, I can look out of the window, I can see beautiful trees, I can see a blue sky, I can see clouds. So I'm really focusing on what I can see in front of me. Then if I think about what I can hear, well, I can actually hear some birds singing. I think I can hear my dog snoring somewhere in the background. And even out there, probably just one or two aeroplanes flying overhead. I hope you can see that by focusing on what's happening right in front of you, there's no time in your head for all of that chatter and all of that anxiety. So that can give you just a brief reprieve from everything that's going on. The second thing to do is meditation. So if any of you are good at meditation or you've practiced meditation before, that's something to turn to. I know it's hard for a lot of us to meditate and to stop the brain from all of its thoughts and thinking. So an easy way to do that is to really focus on your breathing. So to start with just an awareness of your breathing. So not trying to change it, but just being aware of it. Just focusing in and saying, well, am I breathing from up here in a very shallow breathing, or am I breathing lower down, a very deep breathing in my abdomen? Think about, what that breath feels like. Is it warm? Is it cold? Can I feel that breath coming out of my nose? Can I feel it going down my throat? So being aware of our breathing brings us back into the here and now. And then you can practice deep breathing. So often it's said to breathe in for 4. So breathe in and then pause for 4. And then breathe out for 4. And even myself just doing that, then I can feel that a lot of the tension is going. I'm relaxing just by doing that. It's a really effective technique. The next thing I would encourage you to do is to find some routines that work for you, because a lot of our routines will be disrupted in this time. Find some routines, some things that make life easy for you, and you know that you have got stuff to turn to or places to turn to, particularly if somebody's working from home for the first time. And if you're working from home with other people around you, then get into some routines. So that just makes it easier to manage. Exercise and fresh air, so getting out. I know we are encouraged to stay home, but everyone is encouraged to get out and to do some exercise in their local area without mixing with too many other people. So yeah, getting outside, getting some exercise, getting a different perspective is really positive. The next one is being tolerant. We are all going to be stressed. We are going to probably get on each other's nerves during this period of time. So be tolerant. Be tolerant of yourself and be tolerant of others. So what I'd say here is choose your response, not a reaction. So a reaction is when something happens, someone presses your button and gets on your nerves and you have a reaction. You might get angry, you might withdraw, you might get tearful, but you have a reaction. I'm encouraging you to pause and choose a response that's more constructive. And we all need to get through this and to come out the other side, I hope, with relationships intact, if not even strengthened. So be aware of that. When you find that your tolerance is low, then do what you need to do so that you can choose that positive response. And it might mean that you walk away for 5 minutes and come back and respond. That's fine as well. I guess on a similar theme is to lower your expectations of yourself and what you can achieve in this time, and lower your expectations of others. When we're feeling very anxious, our productivity dips. It's just a natural thing that happens. We've got so much else so much clutter in our minds, it's very difficult to stay focused and to stay at that same high standard that we would normally set ourselves. So be tolerant of that, and express to others that you're not expecting them to necessarily be as productive as they would be normally, so that there is a little bit of latitude there. And finally, try and notice the good. Notice and appreciate what's going on around you that is positive still. There may even be things coming out of the COVID-19 that are positives for you. So notice those and appreciate those. And notice the things that are just continuing in life as they always did, that are positive for you. Some people find it useful to write a journal. Some people find it useful to maybe write a note and put it in a jar so that they've got an appreciation jar. You might share it on social media, or at the very least at the end of each day, just take a couple of minutes to say, what's gone well this day, what's been good, what's positive, what can I focus on? And that again helps to give us some perspective. And then I really wanted to talk a little bit about self-care, because self-care is really important to look after yourself so that you can look after others. So a good way of thinking about self-care is indulging all of your senses. I'll share some of my areas where, in terms of self-care, some things that I enjoy doing. So first of the senses is touch. So I really love the feel of my dogs. I love my dogs. So I might go and stroke them, give them a pat, give them a cuddle, and that sense of touch. The next one is taste. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but at the moment I've got much more of a sweet tooth than I would normally have. So some of that comfort eating. So taste, for example, chocolate. That can be a small indulgence to make me feel a bit better each day. Sight. So some things that I enjoy doing, just looking out at nature and the beautiful sights around me. But also I've recently taken up drawing. So that's an area of visual, so that I can look at something and think about how I might draw it. And I can get absorbed in that and forget some of these other things that are going on. Hearing. So what's important to you in terms of what you hear? So it might be a beautiful song, piece of music. It might be the birds singing. It might be the sound of your children or grandchildren. Whatever it is that you love, then make sure you tune into that. And smell. So, it might be a favorite perfume of yours. It might be the smell of the flowers. It might be the smell of coffee. Or it might be essential oils that you love. So lots of things that we can use with our sense of smell. Movement as another sense. So I love walking. So going for a walk is really important for me. And that's a way of really sort of getting perspective and doing some of those other mindful things that we talked about. And the other thing that's important for some people is comforting pressure. So it's kind of that feel of a thick, warm blanket or duvet over you. I love to cuddle up with a cushion, for example. So if that's something that is helpful for you, then find time to indulge in that in this difficult time. Finally, you may require some extra support, and that wouldn't be a surprise at this time, that people will need some extra support. So I've just got some resources there that you might want to tap into. You can access a mental health plan, which is psychology or counselling services, subsidised by Medicare. You can access that via your GP, and most GPs currently have telehealth. Beyond Blue, as probably most of you know, is a really good organisation focusing on stress, anxiety and depression. So they are launching a COVID-19 support line, and you've got further resources at the Beyond Blue website there. Lifeline, if you feel you need someone to talk to, then Lifeline is a useful resource. And also headtohealth.gov.au. So that's a government website which has got all sorts of resources and specifically related to COVID-19 that can be helpful. So I hope you found this video useful, and well done you for taking time to focus on you and your well-being. If you'd like to know more about us at Above and Beyond Group and how we can support you and your teams, then please email me at jane@aboveandbeyondgroup.com.au, or you can call me on 0420 507 008.